love Motorola phones, there's no denying that, and if you've been a follower of my channel you'll be very much aware of that as well. But they do confuse me, especially with certain spec choices with different devices in their range. Let me explain. And if you do like videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out when I upload new videos. So for those of you that are aware of Motorola phones in general, they've got a few ranges of devices for you to choose from. They've got the G series, which is probably one of their most well-known series available, and then they've got the more budget E series. They've also branched out in the last couple of years, introducing the more upper mid-range to flagship Edge series as well. And it's not so much the naming scheme of the phones that confuses me, it's more the spec choices for certain upgraded devices that get me a little bit confused as to why they've done certain things over something else. So let me give you a couple of examples. So let me start by just talking about the first two Motorola devices that I reviewed, and that's the G10 and the G30. Now both of these phones have an identical footprint with a very similar 720p display. Obviously the G30 improves in areas such as a higher resolution main camera and an improved performance and faster charging. But then 9 months later, Motorola dropped the G31. Now smartphone manufacturers bringing out a newer model less than a year after they released the previous model is nothing new. There are other smartphone manufacturers that have done the same. But with the G31, it didn't upgrade in every single area over the G30. In terms of the display, they upped the resolution from a 720p display on the G30 to a 1080p panel on the G31, but they took away the 90Hz refresh rate of the G30 and stripped it back to a standard 60Hz refresh rate on the G31. So an upgrade, but not an upgrade. The camera experience could go either way. The G31 uses one of the newer 50 megapixel sensors over the older 64 megapixel sensors of the G30. But with the G31 they dropped the depth sensor that was found on the G30 as well. So it's a triple camera system over a quad camera system. But to be honest, to most people, it's probably not going to make any difference to their everyday use. But for me, if you're going to upgrade, you'd want at least the same, not less. The G31 uses a MediaTek G85 processor over the Snapdragon 662 of the G30, so your choice of phone may just come down to your preference in the chipset that they use. When it comes to battery size for both of these phones, they've both got 5000 mAh batteries, but the already mediocre charging of 15 to 20 watts on the G30 is downgraded even more to just 10 watts on the G31. And I don't know about you, but that tells me that that is certainly not an upgrade. But where's the G10 upgrade? There was no G11, or is this where the G22 comes in? Is that the upgrade over the G10? I mean, not the G20 or even the G21, because there wasn't a G21 upgrade. So it's all kind of a bit confusing to me, at least, where the G22 sits. I mean, technically it is an upgrade over the G10 as it's got a faster processor, 90Hz display and faster charging. So I will just kind of keep that as maybe an upgrade over the G10, but whether it is or not, I don't know. But what about 5G? I mean, last year I reviewed the Motorola G50, which offered 5G on a budget, Snapdragon 480 processor, 90Hz display, triple camera system, unfortunately with no ultra wide, and 15-watt charging. But then 8 months later, Motorola dropped the G51 with an upgraded 1080p display with a 120Hz refresh rate. They added an ultra wide, good move. They introduced a slightly tweaked Snapdragon 480 Plus processor, but then dropped the charging from 15 watts down to 10 watts, which is a bad move. So I don't really get that. But then they dropped the G52, which has the same screen, same resolution, although this time an AMOLED panel dropped to 90Hz. Charging speeds were dramatically increased to 30 watts, which was a very welcome change. But then they used a Snapdragon 680 processor, which is a 4G processor, so no 5G? What? How can you have 5G on the two previous models but then get rid of it on the third model? I don't really understand that at all, especially in 2022 when the G52 will set you back between 250 and 300 quid, and if I'm paying that sort of money for a phone in 2022, I'm going to want 5G. But then just recently Motorola have released the G62, which is basically a G52 with a 5G processor inside. The Snapdragon 480 Plus, so it's essentially the G51 but with some other slight improvements. I mean, the whole thing to me is just a little bit confusing with their names and the spec choices and all that sort of stuff, but let me know if you agree, or if you don't, if you can clarify it for me. I don't know. But then you've got phones like the Motorola G60 and the Motorola G60S, which basically have everything different. They've got different processors, camera resolutions, battery sizes, and different charging speeds. But then you've got the Motorola G71S and G82, which are exactly the same phone, but I can only presume for different markets, but they've got completely different names. Again, something that's a little bit confusing to me, but perhaps the most interesting to me is between last year's Motorola Edge 20 Pro and this year's Motorola Edge 30 Pro. Released just 7 months apart. For the most part, the Edge 30 Pro is an upgrade, except for using Gorilla Glass 3 instead of Gorilla Glass 5 for the display, a plastic frame instead of aluminium. It keeps the main and ultra wide cameras, but it does drop the 5x zoom lens. It has a larger 4,800 mAh battery over the 4,500 of the Edge 20 Pro, with faster 68 watt wired charging, but much worse reported battery endurance. Of course, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 used in the Motorola Edge 30 Pro is more powerful than the Snapdragon 870 found in the Edge 20 Pro, but it is built on a theoretically more efficient 4nm process over the 7nm of the Snapdragon 870. So is it more efficient, or does the more advanced manufacturing favour more power over efficiency? Like I said, I love using Motorola phones. They're probably my favourite Android phones to use, and I'd imagine other manufacturers are going to be guilty of doing the same thing, but because I use Motorola phones more than I use any other Android phone, they are going to be subjected to this kind of scrutiny from me over those other manufacturers. But let me know in the comments what you think of Motorola's upgrades. Are the differences something that you could live without? I'd love to know your opinion, and follow me on social media as I poorly attempt to update with upcoming videos and ideas and any other random crap that I decide to post. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you're notified whenever I put a new video out. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.